and it's Max here. Today we're going to start a real storm by asking the question, who would win between Darth Vader or Spock? Now, this is one of those little matchups that there's surprisingly little comparison of, but when you look at the two characters, you think of it this way. They're both professional second bananas. One serves the Emperor, one serves the Captain. Both of them are very loyal, but their loyalties are based on very different motivations. Darth has been basically manipulated into his loyalty, and everything that he has, everything that he's told to do is done under some sort of pseudo threat and a rigid obedience that even requires him to call his boss my master. Whereas Spock, on the other hand, has a form of loyalty that has come about through years of service with a captain that he knows cares as much about him as he does the ship, the crew. It's an earned loyalty as opposed to a rather imposed and almost threatened one. Now, of course, our old buddy Darth here has the Force on his side. And of course, one major league breathing apparatus. We're talking about a man who, although he's a terrible villain, he runs around with a CPAP machine strapped to his chest. Whereas in the case of Mr. Spock, we're dealing about someone who is, although caught between two worlds, he's a person who has chosen a path of enlightenment, one of a logic versus one that's motivated largely by darkness and hate. Now, if these two came down to a fight, it would kind of depend on what kind of fight you want to pick. You can't necessarily compare their ships because the technologies are different. Now you're asking whether or not a Constitution-class starship could take on a Imperial cruiser. That's not what this is about. This is about the two people. Of course, there's the weapons. Darth has his lightsaber. Spock has a phaser. And a phaser, possibly set on wide field, would be something that probably could not be blocked by a lightsaber. But at the same time, if Darth has possession of the Force, he may very well be able to disarm Spock. So the question really isn't one of the technologies of the weapons, it's of the two people. Now, if the battle takes place in the Star Wars universe, where you have the midi-chlorians, and no, I don't like them any better than anybody else does, but hey, they needed a plot device. Vader definitely has the advantage. But Vulcans, with their superior medulla oblongatas, may very well turn out to be Force sensitive, in which case you would talk about someone who might make the perfect Jedi. Already has the discipline, the rigid adherence to logic, and the ability to focus and have the highest commitment, all the things that are required of a Jedi. If, however, the contest were to take place in the Star Trek universe, in our galaxy, where supposedly there are no midi-chlorians, that might nullify Vader's advantage. After all, then he's just a biomechanical man with no real advantage. In fact, Spock then has the advantage of agility, logic, reason, and most likely knowledge. So who would win in a fight? Well, at the risk of starting a fanboy riot, it really depends on the situation. But if all things were to be equal, I'd put my money on Mr. Spock. You get down to the old caveman astronaut question. If you dropped a caveman and an astronaut in a desert, which one would come out on top? Some people think the caveman will come out on top because he knows raw violence, but the astronaut may come out on top because he knows science. This is one of those little things people love to argue, and that's the kind of argument that this is going to devolve into if it's just the two guys standing there. You have to put it in focus of a situation. It would make a fun mashup, and since the powers that be now have the rights to both universes, maybe someday they'll do something for the fans that'll put those two together. My money, I'm betting on the Vulcan. But hey, it's anybody's game. So, leave your comments below and do your worst. This is Max. See you out in sci-fi world. Peace out. I mean, seriously, dude. A can of spray paint, you're out of the fight. If you can keep your phaser, he will die. You might want to adjust that CPAP machine.
Join me and together we can rule the galaxy.
Yeah, who wants it?
Most impressive.
Well, that's what the people say. Yeah, which one does the cafe con leche? The red one's the latte button, right? So this is for volume. This is for contrast. My mind to your mind.